If I had known what was waiting for me in the dead silence of the Appalachian foothills that night, I would have driven my car off a cliff rather than take that shortcut. There are roads in this country that don't appear on any paper map. Roads that feel like they inhale you, swallowing your vehicle whole into a darkness that headlights can't penetrate. I found one of those roads, or maybe it found me, and while I made it out alive, I didn't come back whole. A part of my sanity is still out there, trapped between the pines, waiting for the high beams to catch a pair of eyes that shouldn't exist. It was late October, around 11 p.m. I was driving a beat-up 2008 Honda Civic, making the long haul from Ohio to North Carolina to help my brother move into his new place. I've always enjoyed night driving. The solitude usually calms me. The cabin of my car smelled like stale gas station coffee and the pine air freshener dangling from my rearview mirror. I had been on the interstate for hours, fighting the monotony of the white lines, when traffic came to a dead standstill. A massive pileup miles ahead. My GPS, glowing blue in the dark interior, chimed with a reroute. It promised to save me 2 hours by cutting through a series of backroads that snaked through the mountains. Being tired and impatient, I didn't hesitate. I took the exit ramp, descending into the valley. At first, it was fine. Just rural 2-lane blacktop passing sleepy farmhouses and open fields. But after 20 minutes, the farmhouses vanished. The road narrowed, the pavement turned cracked and gray, and the trees crowded in closer, their branches interlocking overhead to form a suffocating tunnel. The radio signal died, replaced by static that rose and fell like shallow breathing. The atmosphere shifted about 10 miles in. A heavy, unnatural fog began to roll off the mountainside. It wasn't a gradual mist. It was a wall of white that dropped visibility to near zero instantly. I slowed down to a crawl, maybe 15 miles per hour, my high beams reflecting off the fog and blinding me more than helping. That's when I noticed the silence. Even inside a running car, you can feel the noise of the world outside. Crickets, wind, distant cars. But when I rolled my window down a crack to wipe the condensation off the side mirror, there was nothing. No wind, no wildlife, just a vacuum of silence that made my ears pop. Then the GPS glitched. The screen flickered, the map spinning wildly before freezing. The estimated arrival time jumped from 2 hours to calculating, and finally settled on distinct text that made no sense. Turn back. I blinked, thinking my tired eyes were playing tricks on me. When I looked again, it was just a black screen. My phone showed no service. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles turning white. I told myself it was just a technical error, just bad reception. I decided to look for a spot to turn around, but the road was flanked by steep drainage ditches on both sides. I had no choice but to keep moving forward. I rounded a sharp, blind curve and slammed on my brakes. Standing in the middle of the road, illuminated by the harsh yellow glow of my headlights, was a scarecrow. But as the car skidded to a halt just feet away from it, I realized it wasn't a prop. It was a setup. It was a crude construction made of rusted car parts and animal bones, dressed in a tattered flannel shirt. It was mounted on a heavy iron spike driven directly into the asphalt. Someone had put serious effort into placing this here. My heart hammered against my ribs. I shifted into reverse, ready to back up blindly if I had to, but then I saw movement in my peripheral vision. To my left, just past the tree line, a flashlight clicked on, then another to my right, then a third directly behind me in the rearview mirror. They weren't swaying like people walking. They were perfectly still, beams of light cutting through the fog and fixing directly on my face. I wasn't alone. I had driven straight into a kill box. Panic seized me, cold and sharp. I slammed the gear shift back into drive and floored it. I swerved around the bone scarecrow, my tires screaming as two wheels dipped into the muddy ditch. The undercarriage scraped violently against the asphalt, a sickening metal-on-stone screech, but the car lurched back onto the road. As I sped away, I looked in the rearview mirror. The flashlights didn't follow. They just watched. I pushed the car to 50 dangerous speeds for such a winding road, but terror overrides logic. About a mile down the road, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Headlights appeared behind me. They weren't normal headlights. They were mounted high like on a lifted truck, and they were red. Not amber, not white deep, crimson red off-road lights. They were gaining on me fast. I pushed the pedal to the floor. My old Honda rattled, the engine whining in protest. The red lights got closer, flooding my cabin with a bloody glow. The driver behind me wasn't trying to pass. He was toying with me. He would surge forward, tapping my bumper, sending a jolt through my spine, then back off just enough to let me regain control. It was a game of cat and mouse, and I was the mouse caught in a maze with no exit. The road suddenly straightened out, leading toward an old, covered wooden bridge. It looked ancient, possibly rotting. I didn't know if it would hold the weight of the car, but the red lights were right on my bumper. I hit the bridge. The sound of tires on loose wooden planks sounded like machine gun fire. Halfway across, the truck behind me slammed on its brakes, stopping at the entrance of the bridge. For a second, I thought I had escaped. Then I saw why he stopped. At the end of the bridge, the road was blocked. A massive oak tree had been felled across the path, completely obstructing the way. Standing on top of the trunk were three figures wearing welding masks. They held objects that caught the glint of my headlights, chains, pipes, maybe a machete. I slammed on the brakes, skidding to a halt just inches from the fallen tree. I was trapped. The truck behind me on the bridge revved its engine, blocking the retreat. The men in front hopped down from the tree and started walking toward my car, their movements calm, synchronized. I locked the doors, a futile gesture. I looked around frantically. Below the bridge was a rocky creek bed, maybe a 15-foot drop. It was suicide, but staying in the car was an execution. One of the men smashed my driver's side window with a pipe. Glass exploded inward, cutting my cheek. A gloved hand reached in to unlock the door. Adrenaline is a powerful drug. Without thinking, I unbuckled, scrambled into the passenger seat, kicked the door open, and threw myself out of the car just as the driver's door was ripped open. I didn't look back. I vaulted over the wooden railing of the bridge and plummeted into the darkness below. I hit the water hard. It was freezing and shallow, the rocks bruising my ribs and twisting my ankle. I stifled a scream, the pain blinding white-hot. Above me, I heard heavy boots thumping on the wooden planks and shouting. Flashlight beams began to sweep the creek bed. I dragged myself under the thick brush lining the bank, submerging myself in the mud and freezing water, shivering violently. I held my breath until my lungs burned. "Find him," a voice growled. It sounded distorted, metallic. I crawled on my belly through the mud, moving away from the bridge, deeper into the forest. I didn't stand up for what felt like an hour. I just kept crawling, ignoring the sharp rocks slicing my palms. Eventually, the sounds of the men faded, replaced by the distant sound of an engine roaring. My car being moved. I walked for hours in the dark, My ankle was swollen to the size of a grapefruit. I hallucinated shapes in the trees. Finally, just as dawn began to break, turning the sky a bruised purple, I heard the hum of tires on high-speed asphalt. I burst out of the tree line and stumbled onto the shoulder of a major highway. A trucker spotted me. Wet, muddy, bleeding, and waving frantically, and pulled over. I didn't even speak when I climbed into his cab. I just collapsed. He drove me to the nearest state police barracks. The police took my statement, but I could tell they were skeptical. They sent a cruiser out to the coordinates I gave them, or at least where I thought I was. They found my car 2 days later. It wasn't at the bridge. It wasn't even on a road. It was found deep in a ravine, miles from where I had jumped, completely torched. The VIN plate had been melted off. But that's not the part that keeps me awake at night. The police told me there was no covered bridge in that county. They said the road I described, the one with the drainage ditches and the sharp curves, had been closed and overgrown since the late 90s. They said it was impossible for me to have driven there. I want to believe them. I want to believe I hallucinated the bridge and the red lights. But sometimes, when I'm driving alone at night and I look in my rearview mirror, for a split second, I see a red glow reflecting off the glass. And I found something in my jacket pocket the day I got home. A single charred piece of animal bone. I didn't put it there. Someone put it there while I was crawling through the mud. Or maybe they were watching me the whole time, letting me go just so I could tell the story.